Well, first, globally, we're all humans. And so we all have these elements that we are in and out groups, depends on our culture, customs, and ideas around the world. So it's not unique to the nations, not unique to the South. That's what I would hear in a lot of people conversations around this notion of racial inequality.
Welcome back to the Career Thrivers Talk Show, where our conversations with brilliant leaders are transformational. Today, we are honored to be joined by a distinguished guest who wears many hats. Dr. Bowtie Todd Jenkins is an award-winning thought leader, author, and advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Jenkins brings unparalleled insights to our exploration and really helping us answer this question: is DEI currently, are we doubling down on it, or are we easing up? Now, you're going to learn a little bit more about his journey, but it's truly a testament to his commitment to really catalyzing change inside organizations, corporations, but also in his community. As the founder of Bowtie Leadership and Development, he's a prominent voice within the DEI space and within career and leadership development. So on this episode, we are diving deep into the intricate tapestry of DEI initiatives, strategies, and thinking about DEI as a business function. We're going to navigate some of the present challenges and get his insight on where we are today, where we're going, and how we can become better leaders to get there. Let's dive in. So let's talk a little bit about your journey, because your commitment to DEI is inspiring. So you serve as a global inclusion executive, you serve as a corporate board director, an Ivy League researcher, and the founder of your own firm, Bowtie Leadership and Development. Talk to us about what really sparked your journey on this DEI path.
Yeah, well, first, I'm inspired by you. So thank you for having me. This is a beautiful platform and so gracious to share the space. For me, as I reflect, must start with my childhood. I'd been raised by a single teen mom in the inner city of Columbia, South Carolina, raised in the projects, and understanding now what I didn't know then, how segregated our town was in the city of Columbia. And it was something that's very interesting about my childhood. I'm a church boy. I grew up as a church boy, and behind the hood, it was a white church that I would go there for vacation Bible school and go to they had some cool camps, go to their summer camps. And then on Sundays, my grandma would take me to the Baptist church, which was all black church. Now, back then I started realizing there was some cultural differences, on the music. The white church played the guitar. We did have a guitar though, but it was just different vibes. And I started just to really see that, wow, that was my exposure to my first time, being outside of a black population, which was the white church. And then I continue as a first generation college student going to school. And I started to see that, wow, a lot of individuals in the hood didn't make it out like I did. And that was my first epiphany. And then as I graduated from college, I also saw that people who looked like me from freshman year didn't graduate with me. And I started to really think about why is this? And I started to understand the system and the gaps. And so today, I have really been able to grow my career to stand in those gaps and try to work in systems and places to be gap closers at the societal level. And that's my part, and I wake up every day to create spaces for all humans to belong and thrive together, one bow tie combo at a time. And so this is why I love this journey.
Yeah. So I have to ask you, in taking us back and sharing a little bit about your childhood, what would you say, because I can hear someone asking this question, was different about you? Why you, or why did some make it out and some didn't? Because if someone were to just read your LinkedIn profile, look at your resume, they may not connect it to your initial childhood journey.
I don't think was anything different or unique. I think I'm God's child, and that was all the difference that I needed. And that was able to carry me through. And the reason why I say that, I'm very spiritual today. But when back then, even kind of reading biblical terms and things, it allows for me to imagine something It was my imagination bigger than my situation. So that's number one. I was able to see past the struggles and what was put in front of me. The other thing, I had a strong mother and a strong village of women who was raising me and really pushing me and driving me. And I think, as I look back, I started to have that curiosity to really wanting to be a part of that change. And I think when you're able to lash yourself on a higher calling, that pulls you through a lot of challenges and difficult situations, such as the world that I was in. Like I said, I didn't know I was poor. I didn't even know that this was the hood in America, that they look at third graders' test scores to determine how many prison beds to build. I did not know any of those things. So I knew that the world already put me as a stat, but God's favor.
Listen, okay now. All right, friend. Okay, so I have to ask you this question. We're in this, I'm just going to call it the current state of DEI, right? Very multifaceted, if I'm being super PC, okay? But from your vantage point, not only sitting inside of corporate organizations and helping them think about strategy, but also partnering with them, with your team, what do you see as some of the biggest areas of accomplishment, ways that we have progressed and are moving forward? And then what are some of the setbacks with where we are to date?
Yeah, that landscape is very interesting. It depends on the context and the perspective. But generally speaking, I think as a nation from the U.S. standpoint, then we can talk globally if we would like. But from a nation standpoint, I really have thought about this notion that the awareness level, the level of awareness that has come to the corporate desk have really been able to have some strides in their area. Now, this is nothing new. We've been fighting for this from the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. I mean, this has been a struggle in the workplace for equal opportunity for all. But when we talk about D&I, how that continues to evolve, the awareness of those different spectrums of D&I is still a conversation. Now, that's one piece of a stride. Now, we started to really see over the last 10 years that these actions started to, really come into this form of policies and development, and people are starting to, incorporate this into corporate responsibility. And those strides have really hit the U.S. landscape. I will feel at a greater rate than it's done in the past. But at the same vein, there's a lot of challenges in that space. You still have implicit biases every day in organizations and individuals in the institutional level and throughout all the P's, right? The people, the policies, the programs, procedures. And so all of those have challenges. I would say another thing that's a setback, and it also depends on organization maturity, because every organization is in a journey for D&I, and so depending on where the context, one may say, wow, they just started ERG, Employee Resource Group. That's long ago. I mean, depends on where they're at. That's probably the biggest stride that they have had. So I think you got to really understand the organization's maturity in this space. But also to another point is that, when you start to see resources start to be dismissed for D&I initiatives, D&I alignment to the business, you start to see priorities are shifting. And when D&I is being deprioritized, that is, in my opinion, it's a setback.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that you're seeing that from your vantage point today with organizations, maybe it being more of a hot priority? Maybe it was an enterprise strategy in 2021. Now we're 2 years later and maybe the ERG gets a few $1,000s. What would you say? Okay, I think I kind of answered the question. I know that I'm seeing that. Let me say that. I'm seeing some of that deprioritization. What are you seeing from your vantage point?
It depends. It depends on the organization, depends on the industry. When you think about the consumer industry, you think about the retail industry that's really trying to, you started this to go to multiculturalism with the products. This is not new. However, you always start to see the shifts, especially with, the political landscape. That influence a lot. That's a major factor in determining how some companies respond. We all probably are aware of recently around the affirmative action, and you start to see a lot of companies, in my opinion, maybe over interpreting the ruling And that is starting to really allow individuals to pause, to understand legal considerations around race-conscious work. We started to see a lot of individuals also deprioritize that dollar spent with the ERGs and really trying to go back to the drawing board to say, does this risk outweigh the benefit? And, it always comes down to the organization's missions and values and what they believe in and the North Star. The ones who most likely probably wouldn't took their foot off the pedal before the recent decision probably are still moving forward. And the ones who've not, who would have, they probably, are ducking under. But I like to focus on that middle. It's a happy middle out there. It's a multi-billion-dollar market that is still untapped in this space. And more than ever, our people are more aware in the organizations. You have individuals not waiting until what happened in the community to impact their workplace. They're saying, look, if this don't change, if I don't feel like I belong, I leave. And it is what it is.
Yeah, and that costs the org money. I mean, that hits the bottom line.
That turnover.
Yeah.
And I do think, as we move forward, we have a lot of factors, the economic uncertainty that continue to be a challenge in many factors of the business line. But at the end of the day, you need people, and you need the best and brightest people. And we have seen over and over is when your people come in with differences and they're able to be productive, the outcome is so much better.
Yeah. So we've thrown out a couple of acronyms. So perhaps there's a listener, they may be familiar with DEI, but then there are these other CSR, ESG, affirmative action. Talk to us a little bit about some of the differences maybe between affirmative action from your vantage point, DEI, and then ESG.
Yeah, so, it's very interesting. Affirmative action and ESG, which stands for environmental social governance, they all have an element. They all are trying to fight for diversity and equality, but they all have different objectives. When we think about affirmative action, that was really built off representation. And it was really for historical disadvantaged groups such as race, ethnicity, and gender. ESG, has been around for years, but ESG, environmental social governance, is all about a criteria that is set to really assess an organization around their ethical standards as well as their procedures. And the ESG is also broken down. Environmental is all about the green initiatives, if you will. Social is all about human capital. How are you training your people, performance management, and governance is about the policies and procedures and your transparency. And I just read a report this morning. ESG Today reported that over half of the individuals who invest in companies pulled away because of the lack of ESG reporting. So it is real. It's real. But when we think about D&I, D&I has evolved over these last this last decade, because now we're putting on some other acronyms. We got accessibility, allyship, belonging, but justice, and so I share that all of those things was really evolved to hit a broad spectrum of individuals and differences to encompass more of the culture. Because affirmative action was really built for targeting and goals. It was like, we need this amount of people in the workforce. That's what affirmative action was for. And ESG was kind of on the outside, but we started to see a lot more of D&I. It's now becoming incorporated in the ESG, especially the S part. And you see D&I hit all like environmental justice. It talks about, what are you doing in the community? CSR stands for corporate social responsibility. And so that's really, what are you doing in the communities in which you live and serve?
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about some of the differences, because I think, being U.S. citizens, when we hear DEI, we automatically think about what's happening in the U.S. For many of us, our mind automatically goes to over the last 3 years, racial justice. Talk to us about the differences between some of the global work and the national work. Hey Thriver, I'm excited for you to get your hands on your copy of the Blueprint to More Visibility and Influence. This is a powerful free resource that's designed to catapult your influence and amplify your impact. in your business or company. Now, this isn't just another online guide. This is your strategic companion that's going to walk you through the world of personal branding and authentic leadership. Inside, you'll unlock essential strategies that are going to help you do a few things. One, sharpen your self-awareness and own your unique story. Navigate the complexities of workplace dynamics with more confidence. Elevate your presence in any room and ensure that you are not only seen, but also heard and valued. Why wait for opportunities when you can create them? With this blueprint, you'll learn how to cultivate a personal brand that commands respect and opens the door for new opportunities. And the best part, you'll start seeing the world differently, not just as a place where you fit in, but one where you stand out. You'll transform your self-doubt into more self-assurance and turn your aspirations into tangible achievements. So join me in our community of thrivers who are making their mark. Don't let this moment pass you by. Head on over to letsthrivetogether.com to download your free copy of the blueprint to more visibility and influence today. Start your journey and let's thrive together.
Yeah, well, first, globally, we're all humans. And so we all have these elements that we are in and out groups, depends on our culture, customs, and ideas around the world. So it's not unique to the nations, not unique to the South. That's what I would hear in a lot of people conversations around this notion of racial inequality. It's very unfortunate. The darker your skin is around the world, we see in research, the more or the far worse treatment you have around the world in every place. I mean, that is, to me, that's interesting. And so we see that race is not a U.S. problem, and everybody shares that. It is around the world. Colorism is very real. And as you see, as we go and talk about the global landscape of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you do have to take in, this component and understanding of local land around their policies, their religious preface and affiliations, because that really dictate a lot of the customs and cultures around what is accepted and what is not. And so globally, you see a lot of organizations really kind of side on gender, because that's pretty a factor that a lot of global companies track and these outside the US. But you're starting to see, I was in Australia last month. We were talking with the indigenous community. They were talking about indigenous and the intersection of being Black. In Australia, same conversation in Canada. In Asia, colorism. Individuals, do you know that the market of bleaching your skin, the cost of that market is outweighing beauty supplies today. Individuals are wanting to bleach in Asia is a huge issue. And so when we really get into conversation of where this D&I touches, and you really think about this level of humanity that we're trying to go after, it's a conversation. This conversation is for every table around the world.
Yeah, that's such great insight. And I think for many of the organizations, like you mentioned, depending on the org maturity, that may have started their journey in 2020 or 2021, they started out with initiatives. They said, hey, we need unconscious bias training. We need everyone to watch the video, take the course. We did it. And then there's more of what you're speaking to in the work that you do, which is an alignment to thinking about DEI as a business function. For the leader that's listening, that may have been in more of that former environment where they did the unconscious bias course, they did the next course that rolled out, and they're like, okay, we're done with this, right? How would you educate them on seeing DEI as a business function?
Well, I do believe that you need both in the organization or in the ecosystem. D&I initiatives such as programs, the training, also even the ERG groups pushing forward. But when it becomes a business imperative, the sustainability that happens in the elements that you can see and put into not only impacting the bottom line, but the culture and also the consumer and your customers is just profound. And so you see D&I initiatives are usually like standalone projects. It's like, okay, all the managers go through the training. We're done, check, right? But when it's justified in the business and it's also a business alignment, everyone is on board to think like a think tank every day of how we're going to do that. I was with another company about 3 months ago, and we were talking about really hitting another target market of a Hispanic market. And it wasn't a D&I initiative. It was a business alignment. And the employees knew if that they did not get this market share, they may not have a job. And so that focus and that commitment, that level of commitment, it transformed. And so to that leader, I would encourage you to think about, just like anything you do in your business, you need clear metrics. You need objectives, you need SMART goals, you need accountability. When you put that lens on your D&I, watch the difference it'll make.
And there you have it. I feel like that was a mic drop moment. I just felt a little pause where that just needed to like rest on the mic. Okay, so you have on a bow tie today for those who cannot see you. And the name of your organization is Bowtie Leadership and Development. And we also mentioned in the intro that you're a founder. So I have a couple of questions in this space. Let's start with how you got to Bowtie. What does that mean? What does it stand for?
Yeah, for me, because I was raised in the hood, not a lot of bow ties was in the hood when I was growing up. But, when I went and started my professional life, I'm a proud brother of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, and I started to see other Black men, physicians, and lawyers and judges, et cetera, and they would all have bow ties on. And I'm like, oh, that's cool, and because I was a necktie guy throughout in the Baptist church, we wore neckties.
Listen,
Grandma gonna make sure I have my necktie.
Black suit, gray suit, blue suit, necktie,
except for Easter.
Seersucker.
Seriously. But really this concept, when I started wearing bow ties, it was just really me to starting to wear them. But I noticed something. When I travel around the world, locally and globally, people will stop me and ask me about my necktie. I mean, strangers. People who I probably would never interacted with. So it started to become a conversation starter. And then it led to something else. It led to this belief and this philosophy like, wow, these people are leaning in. They're curious. They're approaching me. I guess I'm approachable. And I started to think about, what if we lived in a world where people will approach each other like they approach my neckties in the workplace? So in my research, in my consulting, in my training, I see that is the most difficult part in these workplaces, in these conversations, and how to work or how to interact with someone that's totally different than you, that's a stranger. And so what I did was I took the bow tie, made it into a little acronym, how I govern my conversations every day. This is how our team manage our work. I share it with you all. I share it with third graders to Harvard PhDs. So if you like it, you can apply it. And so the B stands for, and in the conversation, I ask that you be mentally present. So many times that we're physically in the room and mentally absent. And how many of you all know when you're there, trust me, you're mentally absent. So that's rule number one. Ground rule number two is the O, open to new ideas. It's going to be things that you share, Brittany, that I may agree or disagree with, and vice versa. But do you come with the level of open to hear, to really hear, so I can understand the perspective? And I think that's a beautiful thing to do. It takes some vulnerability in a conversation to open yourself up. The next letter is W. W stands willing to engage and share your own perspective while owning your truth. So many times we come into conversations and we take that seat to just listen, and we nod and we smile, but you got a story too. So make sure you share your story too, and make sure you own your space that you're in and you have something to say. And so when you be present, open, and share, the most challenging part of these conversations is what I say the most challenging part of this necktie, which is how do you tie it together? How do you leave this experience better than you came in? And my friend, that's up to you. And that's why this is just a figure, but bow tie is a philosophy that everyone can apply to their life.
Can you tell this man did some research around that? I mean, maybe so, I love it. I love it. So we're talking about this dichotomy of like, is DEI easing up? Are we doubling down on it? What would you say to the executive level leader who is in a diversity role, so chief diversity officer role, who's feeling burnt out in the work that they're doing because they've been pushing and pushing, but they're in a space where the company's easing up on the work? How would you encourage that leader?
Well, just like your previous guest said, take a nap. Go take a nap if you're tired. But no, all jokes aside, is that you gotta know what is your higher calling for the work. For me, this is me speaking to myself and other colleagues around, is that when you know your higher calling, even though you have some setbacks or some challenging moments, your higher calling will pull you through. It will pull you through. It will motivate you. It will allow you to refine, refocus, go refuel, and get back into it. And so I want to encourage everyone out there in this space is that, yes, every day is not going to be a just, equitable, and equal world. That's the vision. But we got to fight to do that. We got to fight to do that. And you have to be prepared to do that. And so when you see your organization easing up or scaling back, I mean, that's business. Business happen like that every day. Every day is decisions that need to be made at the executive level where it may not be in favor of your budget, of your resources, or even your support. And then you have to come and ask the question, is this the place for me that I can continue to share my gifts and be the best I can be? When you start to see that as no, I mean, I think you have your answer there, whether you don't need to ease or you need to get out. You need to get out of that organization. But I would say that we have seen over in historic times that this work, ups and goes, notes and flow. And I think the commitment and the accountability is what keeps us through. And that's why we don't need short-term initiatives. We need long-term planning. We need stretch goals. We need things that are going to take us there the next 5 years. So when you have this social climate or these political unrest or social unrest, if you will, it doesn't shake the core of who you committed to. Now, you're going to have to pivot because public opinion is key these days. I mean, we have a lot of social media. We have a lot of, individuals taking sound bites for what you say on stage, and you have to understand that your company, much is given, much is required, and you have an obligation to do the right thing for our community.
Yeah, that's so good. So with you advising leaders in that direction, of course, being an executive level leader yourself, I'm curious, what does your personal leadership look like? What are you working on in terms of your own current personal or professional development, and how do you sustain that?
Well, one thing for me, I don't know if because I hit my 30s, and have a family now, is joy. Joy and peace is a beautiful thing. And it's something that the world can't give you and the world can't take it away. And that is the truth. Come on, church boy. That is the truth. Because it's something that we do a lot of things. And one of my colleagues at Harvard talks about this pursuit of happiness. We keep adding things. We got to add this label. We got to add this brand. We got to add this. And one of the things they do in the Eastern culture is they start taking away stuff. They start, and I started understanding that the true beauty and joy in who I am is already within me. I don't need to keep adding on and reaching this status and that, because, when I leave here, that won't leave with me, right? It's only that impact. So personally, what I am doing as a husband, as a father, is ensuring that my moments matter and they count. And I think we talked about this years and years ago about you, and I still practice this, give your best yes. Because it's also a lot of best no's that I give daily. And when you have those things aligned of your priorities that matter to your well-being or what are the things you love, it brings you joy. And you can go to bed at night. If things are keeping you up at night about your job, I would love to question, is that a place you want to feel as if this, because we have these 40-hour, and really that's arbitrary for certain roles. But, it's this interesting, people take their work home. I started saying that I was talking about my work at dinner. I'm on the phone with my home. I'm talking, he's like, don't care about this. He's a football player. And I'm telling him all about what's going on. That is when you need to take a pause button and say, is my professional work bringing me joy, or is it taking away my joy? And I think for me, where I'm at today is that I want to have a joyful life, and I'm living in that now because tomorrow's not promised.
So good. It resonates so deeply. It made me think about a book that I believe is recommended reading for leaders. It's an annual read for me. It's called Essentialism. It's by Greg McKeown. It's about the disciplined pursuit of less. And so it's exactly what you said, like, what is the thing that I need to stop doing so I can do more of what brings me joy?
It's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So as we wrap up, what advice would you share with the leaders that are listening that want to thrive in their career, but also live a life of joy?
Well, first, I believe that it starts inner working. So many times we love to look out the window and allow for others to define our joy. Ooh, that's what joy looked like. Ooh, that's what it feels like. But I would say hold up the mirror and do some inner work. When no one's watching, what brings me joy? When everybody's watching, what brings me joy? And really making sure that you're true to who you are and authentically speaking and sounding your joy. So if you in this space of thriving, it's a joyful, I think it's a joyful space when you're thriving, that feeling of state, because every day you won't be happy, but every day you can bring joy. Every day you can bring joy, and every day you can practice peace. And so I say, number one, start with the inner work and the self-reflection. And it may be some small things. This is something interesting I started to do. So I read before I go to bed every night, but I started doing really speaking to myself. Because at night, I will feel like I couldn't sleep. I'll be thinking about everything I have to do tomorrow. I got to fly up at 5 a.m., And then I start saying, no, body, you deserve sleep. You've been good today. You've been good to me. So let me be good to you. Let's get this 12-hour sleep shift. That is how I talk.
How many?
12. We try to get it all the way through.
Okay.
The full healing.
The full cycle.
The full healing.
Okay.
Now, do I ever achieve that? We'll talk about it on another episode. But all that's to say is that sometimes the healing in yourself as a leader is already within. And all these things and these tools, these nuggets that drop, they're just a refresher. They're just a reminder. They're going to empower you and re-energize you. But at the end of the day, once the mic is off, once this program is over, it's really up to you. And it's really what you're doing and you're 24/7 to be that best self. So as a leader who aspires to continue to thrive, bring that joy with that self-reflection, seek it within. No one needs to validate it. You don't even have to tell everybody, because that's when you're seeking validation, and you'll be doing that for the rest of your life. So just go ahead today, because guys, we say this in the church too, when you know better, you what?
Okay, when you know better, you do better.
You do better. So the knowledge is out there.
Listen, because you have dropped it on us today, my friend. Thank you for this yes, okay?
Hey, this is
Thank you for this yes.
Thank
So
you
tell us
me.
before we wrap up, what does thriving mean to you?
Thriving, it's a process. It's a process of becoming. It's a positive process. It's joy in thriving, but it's also the celebration of happiness and joy in the moments, and also with the expectation that the best is yet to come.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Thank you so much for being on the show. Can we give a round of applause to my friend? Hey Creative is a company that stands at the intersection of imagination and reality here in Nashville, Tennessee. They specialize in transforming events into memorable experiences as partners for brands and advocates for small businesses. At Career Thrivers, we've been a proud client of Hey Creative as they foster self-reflection, promote growth, and create moments that are beautiful and inspiring. Experience the magic of Hey Creative today by visiting heycreative.com.